The message came at midnight ship time. Captain Park Ho was sitting alone in his quarters when his console started blinking red. He put down his drink and touched the screen. The words that appeared made his blood turn cold. Prime under attack. Empire invasion. Request immediate assistance. Please, anyone. Ho read the message 3 times. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from memory. 20 years ago, he was just a boy of 8 years old. His family was running from death. The Syndicate Wars had destroyed their colony on 442b. Human refugees were everywhere in that sector of space, but nobody wanted them. The other species called humans and feared them. They said humans were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. Every station turned them away. Every planet refused landing permission. Ho remembered his mother crying in the cargo hold of their small ship. He remembered his father's face growing thinner each day as food ran out. He remembered thinking they would all die in the cold darkness between stars. Then the found them. They were gentle beings. They had soft blue skin and large black eyes that showed every emotion. They were not warriors. They had no weapons on their ships. Most species in the galaxy considered them weak and simple. But when they found the human refugee ship drifting without power, they did not run away. Elder Vin was the one who opened communication. Ho would never forget that voice, soft and kind, speaking broken human language. You are hungry, you are tired, come, we will help. No other species had said those words, only the. They took the refugees to Prime. They gave them food, shelter, and medicine. Ho lived there for 3 years while his family recovered and saved enough credits to travel to a human colony. The children played with him even though he was bigger and stronger. They were not afraid of the boy. They treated him like family. Elder Vin had said something to him on the day he left. Ho was 11 years old, standing at the spaceport with tears in his eyes. Little human, the elder had said, touching Ho's head with his thin blue fingers. The galaxy calls your kind dangerous, but I see your heart, it is good. Remember us and know that kindness is never wasted. Ho had promised to remember. He had never broken that promise. Now he was 38 years old. He was the captain of the heavy cruiser Iron Wake, one of the most feared human warships in the sector. He had fought pirates, raiders, and hostile aliens for 15 years. His crew called him the Stone because nothing could shake him in battle. But this message shook him. He stood up and walked to the bridge. The night crew looked at him with surprise. It was not normal for the captain to appear at this hour. Lieutenant, Ho said to his pilot, set a course for Prime, maximum speed. Was a young woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had served under Ho for 4 years. She knew that tone in his voice. Something was very wrong. Sir, Prime is in neutral territory. We have no authorization to. I am authorizing it now. Ho's voice was hard as metal. Set the course. Did not argue. She began working the controls. The ship hummed as the engines prepared for faster-than-light travel. Commander entered the bridge 5 minutes later. She was Ho's second-in-command, a woman of 40 with gray streaks in her black hair and scars on her hands from many battles. She looked at the navigation display and raised one eyebrow. Prime, that is a long way from our patrol route, Captain. The Empire is invading, Ho said. He showed her the message. They are killing them, they cannot fight. They have no army, no weapons. They will slaughter them all. Read the message. Her face became serious. They are not our enemy. We have no treaty with the. Command will not approve this action. I know. You could lose your ship, your rank, everything. Ho looked at her with eyes that held fire. When I was a child, they saved my life. They saved my family. They were the only ones in this entire galaxy who showed us mercy. Every other species left us to die. He stepped closer to. Now they are dying and they are calling for help. If I do nothing, what kind of man am I? Was quiet for a long moment, then she nodded slowly. I was on the refugee ships too, Captain. Different time, different route, but I remember what it was like when no one would help. She turned to the crew. You heard the captain. Battle stations in 6 hours. We are going to prime. The crew moved without question. Word spread through the ship quickly. By morning, everyone knew why they were changing course. Some were confused. Some were worried about breaking regulations, but most of them understood. Humans remembered their debts. Ho went to the communications room and opened a wideband channel. He recorded a message and sent it to every human ship within range. This is Captain Park Ho of the Iron Wake. 20 years ago, they gave shelter to human refugees when no one else would. Now the Empire is invading there. I am going to help them. I am not asking for orders. I am not asking for permission. I am asking for anyone who remembers. Anyone who has a debt to pay. Join me at Prime. Let us show the galaxy what happens when you attack the friends of Earth. He ended the transmission and sat back in his chair. Maybe no one would answer. Maybe he was flying alone into a battle he could not win. It did not matter. He had made a promise to an old elder, and he would keep it even if it killed him. The Iron Wake jumped to faster-than-light speed, cutting through the darkness toward a world that had once saved a scared little boy. That boy was now a man of war, and he was bringing fire with him. Across the sector, human ship captains heard the message. Some turned away and continued their regular duties. But others, the ones who remembered refugee camps and closed doors and the kindness of strangers, began changing course. One by one, they started to gather. 3 days passed. The Iron Wake dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Ho stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical display. What he saw made him smile for the first time since receiving the distress message. He was not alone. 17 human ships had answered his call. They appeared on the display as bright blue dots, arranged in a loose formation around his position. There were heavy cruisers like his own, fast destroyers, and even 2 old battleships that looked like they had been pulled out of retirement. Each ship had its own story, its own captain, its own reasons for being here. Incoming transmission from the battleship Hammer of Dawn, Lieutenant reported. The main screen flickered and a face appeared. It was an old man with white hair and a thick scar running down his left cheek. His eyes were hard, but there was warmth in them. Captain Park, the old man said, I am Admiral Dew. I commanded refugee evacuation ships during the Syndicate Wars. They saved 3 of my transports when our engines failed. 6,000 humans lived because of them. He paused. I brought my ship out of storage for this. Where do you need me? Ho felt his throat tighten. Admiral, the honor is mine. Please take command of the fleet. No, the Admiral shook his head. This is your mission, Captain. You called us here. You will lead. I will follow. More transmissions came in. Captain Shin Bora of the destroyer Swift Current had lost her parents in the refugee crisis and was rescued by a medical ship. Commander of the cruiser Black Mountain had spent 2 years on Prime as a child. Every captain had a story. Every ship carried humans who remembered. Stood beside Ho, reading the tactical data. They have 43 warships in orbit around Prime. Ground forces have already landed. They are rounding up the population into camps. Her voice was cold with anger. Reports indicate mass executions have begun. Why? Asked from her station. They have nothing, no resources, no military secrets. Why would they do this? Because they can, Ho answered. They are weak by galactic standards, easy targets. They want to expand their territory, and no one will stop them from taking a planet of peaceful farmers and artists. No one except us, said. Ho nodded. He opened a channel to all ships. This is Captain Park to all vessels. I will not lie to you. We are outnumbered more than 2 to 1. They have better positions and fresher crews. If we attack, some of us will die. He paused, letting the words sink in. But down on that planet, millions of are being murdered right now. They cannot fight back. They have no one to help them except us. I say we show the what do when they are angry. The response was immediate. Every ship signaled readiness. On the Iron Wake, the crew moved to battle stations with grim determination. Weapons Chief reported all guns loaded and ready. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke, but his eyes burned with purpose. Captain said, "I am receiving a transmission from the flagship. They have detected us." "Put it through." The screen changed to show a commander. There were large beings with gray skin and 4 arms. They had evolved on a heavy-gravity world and were stronger than most species. Their empire had grown through conquest and fear. This commander looked at Ho with obvious contempt. "Human vessels, you have entered restricted space. This system is now under control. Leave immediately or be destroyed." Ho stood straight. "I am Captain Park Ho of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are committing genocide against a peaceful species. Withdraw your forces from Prime or face the consequences." The commander laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Consequences? From 18 ships, we have 43, and they are not your concern. They are weak creatures, useful only as slaves. Why would care about them?" "Because they cared about us when no one else did." The commander's laughter stopped. He seemed confused by this answer. In his world, power was the only thing that mattered. The idea of fighting for those weaker than yourself made no sense to him. "You humans are strange. Very well. If you wish to die for these pathetic creatures, we will grant your wish." The transmission ended. Looked at Ho. "They are moving to intercept, 43 ships forming attack formation." "Then we will meet them." Ho sat in his command chair. "All ships, this is the plan. We are not going to fight them in open space. We are going straight through their formation and into the planet's atmosphere." Admiral's voice came through the comm. "Atmospheric entry during combat. That is extremely dangerous, Captain." "For most species, yes, but our ships are built to handle extreme conditions. Humans evolved on a planet with high gravity, violent weather, and deadly radiation. We built our ships the same way." Ho smiled. "They cannot follow us into the atmosphere. Their ships will burn, ours will not." There was silence on the comm. Then the Admiral laughed. "You are either a genius or completely insane, Captain Park." "Maybe both. All ships follow my lead. We punch through their line and dive straight for the planet. Ground forces are the priority. We save as many as we can." The human fleet began to move. 18 ships against 43. The numbers were bad, but humans had never cared much about numbers. They had survived an ice age, built civilizations from nothing, and spread across the stars despite every other species calling them monsters. Now those monsters were going to war for the kindest beings in the galaxy. The first weapon's fire lit up the darkness of space. The battle for Prime had begun. Ho watched the enemy ships approaching on his display. He thought about the scared boy he had been, hungry and cold in a broken ship. He thought about Elder Vin's gentle voice and soft touch. He thought about every refugee who had been saved by kindness. "All weapons free," he said. "Show them why the galaxy fears us." The Iron Wake's guns roared to life. Around him, 17 other human ships added their fire to the storm. The formation broke as explosions tore through their ranks. They had expected easy prey. They had found something else entirely. They had found humans with a debt to pay. The Iron Wake shook violently as weapons fire struck its shields. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Damage reports flooded the command console. But Ho did not slow down. He pushed forward, straight into the heart of the enemy formation. "Shields at 60%, reported. Her voice was calm despite the chaos around her. "Keep going," Ho ordered. "Take us into the atmosphere now." The pilot's hands moved across her controls with perfect precision. The Iron Wake tilted downward, diving toward the blue and green surface of Prime. Behind them, the other human ships followed in a tight formation. Fire and light surrounded them as both enemy weapons and atmospheric friction tried to tear them apart. 3 destroyers attempted to follow. Ho watched them on his display. He almost felt sorry for them. The ships entered the atmosphere at combat speed. Within seconds, their hulls began to glow orange, then white. They were not built for this kind of stress. Human ships were different. Humans came from Earth, a planet where survival meant adapting to everything the universe could throw at them. Their ships reflected this. Heavy armor, redundant systems, engines that could handle extreme heat and pressure. The first destroyer exploded in a ball of flame. The second tried to pull up and broke apart from the stress. The third managed to retreat back to orbit, its hull damaged beyond repair. Ships are not following, reported with a small smile. They are staying in orbit. Good, they can watch from up there. Ho turned to target their ground installations. I want every military base destroyed before we land. The weapons chief nodded and began coordinating with the other ships. Moments later, beams of energy and kinetic rounds rained down from the human fleet. Ground bases erupted in explosions across the surface of Prime. Supply depots, vehicle stations, command centers. All of them were reduced to burning rubble within minutes. Ground forces are in chaos, said, reading the sensor data. They did not expect an attack from the sky. Most of their anti-air systems were designed for high-altitude threats, not atmospheric combat. Ho nodded. This was the advantage of being a. Other species designed their wars for comfort and safety. Humans designed theirs for survival against impossible odds. Find the prison camps, Ho said. That is where they are being held. The sensors swept across the planet's surface. 3 large camps appeared on the display, each one holding thousands of captured. The camps were surrounded by soldiers and heavy weapons. Guard towers watched over rows of simple shelters where the prisoners were kept. Captain said quietly, there are bodies outside the camps, many bodies. Ho's jaw tightened. They had already started their killings. Every minute mattered now. All ground teams prepare for deployment. We land at the largest camp in 10 minutes. The Iron Wake and 5 other ships descended toward the main camp, while the rest of the fleet provided cover fire. As they approached, soldiers began firing upward with their weapons. The shots bounced harmlessly off the ship's armor. Landing zone is hot, observed. Enemy troops are forming defensive positions around the camp. Then we will make it hotter. Ho stood up from his chair. You have command of the ship. I am going down with the ground team. Sir, the captain should not. I have to. Ho looked at her with eyes full of old pain and new purpose. I made a promise to someone down there. I need to see it through myself. Understood, she nodded once. Come back alive, Captain. Ho left the bridge and went to the deployment bay. 50 soldiers waited there in full combat armor. They were the best fighters on his ship, volunteers who had trained for exactly this kind of mission. Was among them, carrying a heavy rifle that most humans would need 2 hands to lift. He held it in one. Listen carefully, Ho said to his team. Our mission is to free the prisoners and eliminate all forces in the camp. They are not fighters. They are scared, hurt, and confused. We protect them with our lives. Any questions? There were none. The ship touched down with a heavy thud. The bay doors opened, and hot air rushed in. Ho could smell smoke and blood on the wind. The sound of weapons fire filled his ears. Go! The human soldiers charged out of the ship like demons released from a cage. They were waiting for them, but they were not prepared for what they faced. Humans were. Their muscles were denser than most species. Their bones were harder. Their reflexes were faster. They could survive wounds that would kill others and keep fighting through pain that would make most creatures give up. In close combat, there were few species in the galaxy that could match them. They learned this lesson in blood. Ho fired his weapon as he ran toward the camp entrance. A soldier fell. Then another was beside him, his heavy rifle cutting down enemies like a farmer cutting wheat. The other soldiers spread out, moving with practiced coordination. Contact left, someone shouted. A group of soldiers appeared from behind a building. They raised their weapons, but Ho was faster. He threw himself to the side, rolled, and came up firing. 3 shots, 3 kills. They reached the main gate of the camp. It was locked with a heavy metal bar. Stepped forward, grabbed the bar with both hands, and pulled. The metal bent, then broke. The gate swung open. Inside, thousands of looked up with their large black eyes. They were thin and weak, covered in dirt and bruises. Many had wounds from beatings. Some were crying. Others were too shocked to react at all. Ho's heart broke at the sight of them. These gentle, kind beings who had saved his life were now broken and terrified. "We are humans," he called out in a loud voice. "We are here to help. You are safe now." A young child, no more than 5 years old, walked slowly toward Ho. She looked up at him with eyes full of fear and hope. "You came," she whispered. "The scary aliens came to save us." Ho knelt down so he was at her level. Behind him, the sounds of battle continued as his soldiers cleared the rest of the camp. But in this moment, there was only him and this small child. "Yes," he said softly, "we came, and we will not leave until you are all safe." The child reached out and touched his armored hand. She was shaking, but when Ho gently closed his fingers around hers, she stopped. For the first time in days, she smiled. Ho stood and lifted the child in his arms. He looked at his soldiers. "Move these people to safety, every single one. No dies today, not while we are breathing." The move to obey. The liberation of Prime had begun. The battle for Prime lasted 3 days. Ho had not slept in 40 hours. His armor was covered in dust and blood, most of it not his own. His muscles screamed for rest, but he refused to stop. There were still to save, still to fight. After freeing the first camp, the human forces had split into 3 groups. Each group targeted one of the remaining prison facilities. Ho led the assault on the northern camp, the largest and most heavily defended. They had dug in deep, building walls of rubble and setting up heavy weapon positions. They knew they were losing and had decided to make the humans pay for every step forward. "Captain, we have a problem," reported. The big soldier was crouched beside Ho behind a broken wall. "They have moved prisoners to the front lines. They are using them as shields." Ho cursed under his breath. This was exactly what he had feared. They were not honorable soldiers. They were slavers and murderers who would use any tactic to survive. "How many prisoners?" "At least 200. They have them lined up in front of their main defensive position." Ho looked around the corner. He could see the barricade in the distance. In front of it, a long line of prisoners stood with their hands bound. They were crying and shaking with fear. Behind them, soldiers pointed weapons at both the prisoners and the approaching humans. "They think this will stop us," Ho said. "Will it?" asked. Ho's eyes narrowed. "No, it just changes our approach." He activated his comm unit. "I need precise orbital support. Can you hit their rear positions without touching the front line?" His voice crackled through the speaker. "That is a very small margin for error, Captain. 1 degree off and we hit the prisoners." "Can you do it?" There was a pause. "I can do it." "Then do it on my signal." Ho turned to his team. "When the orbital strike hits, we move fast. Our goal is to reach the prisoners before they can react. We grab them and pull them to safety, non-lethal if possible until they are clear." His soldiers nodded. They understood. Saving innocent lives was more important than killing enemies. Fire. A moment later, brilliant light fell from the sky. The orbital strike hit the rear of the position with surgical accuracy. Buildings exploded. Vehicles flipped through the air. The defensive line collapsed into chaos. "Now!" Ho ran faster than he had ever run in his life. His legs burned. His lungs screamed. But he did not slow down. Around him, 50 human soldiers charged toward the prisoner line. The guards turned their weapons on the prisoners. They were going to execute them rather than let them be rescued. Ho raised his rifle and fired while running. His first shot took down the closest to the prisoners. His second shot dropped another. His heavy rifle roared, cutting through 3 more enemies in a single burst. They reached the prisoner line in seconds. Ho grabbed the nearest, a thin male with terror in his eyes, and pushed him toward safety. His soldiers did the same, forming a protective wall between the prisoners and the remaining. The battle became close and brutal. Ho fought hand to hand with a soldier who was nearly twice his size. The alien's 4 arms gave it an advantage, but Ho had something better. He had rage. He thought of the dead he had seen outside the first camp. He thought of the crying children. He thought of every gentle soul that these monsters had killed. His fist connected with his face. Once, twice, 3 times, the alien fell and did not get up. "Prisoners secured," someone shouted, "area clear." Ho stood in the middle of the destroyed position, breathing hard. Around him, bodies lay scattered on the ground. Not a single prisoner had been killed during the assault. Meanwhile, in orbit, the space battle had turned in humanity's favor. Admiral had taken command of the fleet's defensive operations, while Ho led the ground forces. The old admiral had proven that age had not dulled his tactical mind. The fleet had tried several times to push through the atmosphere and support their ground troops. Each time, the human ships had driven them back. The vessels could operate in the atmosphere where ships could not. This gave them a massive advantage. They could attack from below while the enemy was forced to stay in the dangerous middle ground between space and air. By the end of the second day, they had lost 15 ships. The humans had lost only 3. The enemy commander was becoming desperate. On the morning of the third day, they sent a new message. It was not the same commander as before. This one looked older, with deep lines of worry on his gray face. "Human forces, this is Supreme Admiral Tar of the Empire. We request a ceasefire to discuss terms." Ho received the message in the command tent he had set up near the first liberated camp. He was exhausted, but his eyes were sharp as he recorded his reply. "Admiral Tar, this is Captain Park Ho. My terms are simple: complete withdrawal of all forces from space, release of all remaining prisoners, compensation for the families of those you murdered." He paused. "These terms are not negotiable." The Admiral's response came quickly. "Captain, you are asking us to humiliate ourselves. The Empire has never surrendered to—" "You are not surrendering to humans," Ho interrupted. "You are surrendering to the consequences of your own actions. You attacked a peaceful species that had done you no harm. You killed innocents. You made enemies of Earth." He leaned closer to the camera. "Accept the terms or continue fighting. I do not care which you choose. But know this: every hour you delay is another hour my soldiers spend freeing your prisoners and destroying your forces. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. Ho sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. He thought of the promise he had made to Elder Vin 20 years ago. He thought of the small child who had held his hand in the first camp. Whatever the decided, he had kept his word. The debt was being paid. 6 hours later, the fleet began withdrawing from space. The Supreme Admiral had chosen survival over pride. The battle for Prime was over. They had won. 1 week after the withdrawal, Captain Park Ho stood in the central plaza of Prime's capital city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Around him, thousands had gathered. They watched him with their large black eyes, silent and waiting. Ho was not comfortable with crowds. He was a soldier, not a politician. But the council had requested his presence for this ceremony, and he could not refuse them. The plaza had been damaged during the invasion. Broken statues lay in pieces on the ground. Buildings showed the scars of weapons fire, but they had already begun rebuilding. They were a gentle people, but they were not weak in spirit. They would heal. Elder Vin walked slowly toward the center of the plaza. He was much older now than Ho remembered. His blue skin had faded to a lighter shade and he needed a walking stick to support himself, but his eyes were still the same, kind, wise, full of warmth. Ho's throat tightened as the elder approached. 20 years melted away in an instant. He was a boy again, standing at the spaceport, crying because he had to leave the only place that had ever shown him mercy. "Little human," Elder Vin said. His voice was weaker than before, but his words were clear. "I remember you, the scared boy with the good heart." Ho knelt down so he was at eye level with the elder. He had not planned to kneel, but it felt right. It felt necessary. "Elder Vin, I kept my promise, I remembered." The old reached out and touched Ho's face with thin, trembling fingers. "You did more than remember. You came back. You saved us." Tears formed in his large eyes. "When they attacked, we called for help to everyone we could reach. No one answered. We thought we would all die. Then your message reached me," Ho said, "and I answered." "Why?" The elder's voice broke slightly. "Why did you risk so much for us? We are not your species. We are not your responsibility. We gave you food and shelter long ago, yes, but that was simple kindness. We never expected anything in return." Ho took the elder's hand gently in his own. The fingers were so small and fragile compared to human hands. It was a reminder of how different their species were. And yet, in this moment, they were the same. Just two beings connected by an old bond of kindness and gratitude. "Because kindness is never simple," Ho said. "When my family was dying in space, no one would help us. Everyone was afraid of humans. Everyone called us monsters but you looked at a scared human boy and saw someone worth saving." He paused. "That gift cannot be measured, it cannot be calculated, and it cannot be forgotten." The elder smiled. It was a beautiful smile full of hope and love. "You humans are very strange, so dangerous, so powerful, and yet so full of feeling." "We are both," Ho agreed. "That is what makes us human." The ceremony continued. The council presented Ho and his officers with medals of honor, the highest recognition their species could give. Stood beside him, her expression proud but humble, and the other officers accepted their medals with quiet dignity. Admiral Du was given a special title, Friend of. The old man bowed low when he received it, and Ho saw tears on his face. After the ceremony, there was a feast. They did not have much food left after the invasion, but they shared everything they had. Ho sat with Elder Vin at the head table, eating simple grain dishes and sweet fruits. "What will happen now?" Ho asked. "The May return someday." "Perhaps," Elder Vin nodded slowly. "But we are not alone anymore. Word of what you did has spread across the galaxy. Other species are watching. They saw that the fought for the weak, that humans protect those who cannot protect themselves." He looked at Ho with deep meaning in his eyes. "You have changed how the galaxy sees your kind, Captain. Before, they feared you because of your strength. Now they respect you because of your heart." Ho had not thought about it that way. He had simply done what he felt was right. But the elder's words made him realize that their actions had consequences beyond this one planet. Later that night, Ho walked alone through the streets of the capital. The damage was everywhere, but so were signs of recovery. Families were working together to repair their homes. Children were playing in the streets again, their laughter rising into the cool night air. He stopped at a small park near the spaceport. This was where he had played as a child so many years ago. The trees were older now, their branches reaching toward the stars. He sat down on a stone bench and looked up at the sky. Found him there an hour later. "I received a message from Earth Command," she said, sitting beside him. "They want a full report on our actions. There will be questions about why we engaged without authorization." Ho nodded. He had expected this. What they had done was technically against regulations. There would be hearings and investigations, maybe punishment. "Do you regret it?" asked. He thought about the question. He thought about the prisoners they had freed, the children they had saved, the lives that would continue because of their actions. He thought about Elder Vin's smile and the young girl who had held his hand in the first camp. "No," he said, "I would do it again." Smiled, "Good, because when the council reviews our actions, I think they will see it the same way. We saved an entire species. We showed the galaxy that humans are more than just." She paused. "We showed them that we are worthy of trust." The next morning, the human fleet prepared to leave. The repairs were complete, the wounded were stable, and it was time to return home. Ho stood on the bridge of the Iron Wake, watching Prime grow smaller on the... He thought about the scared boy who had left this planet 20 years ago, crying because he was leaving the only place that had ever shown him kindness. That boy had promised to remember. That boy had grown into a man who kept his promises. The debt was paid in fire and blood and sacrifice, but also paid in hope and healing and the strange, powerful thing called kindness. "Captain," said from her station, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface, audio only." Ho nodded. "Put it through." Elder Vin's voice filled the bridge, old and weak but filled with warmth. "Little human, thank you. May the stars always guide you home." Ho closed his eyes and smiled. "They already have, Elder, they already have." The Iron Wake jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Prime behind. But the bond between humans and would remain forever. Two species, so different in every way, united by something simple and powerful. Kindness remembered, kindness returned, kindness eternal. And across the galaxy, other species watched and wondered. Perhaps they were not monsters after all. Perhaps they were something else entirely. Perhaps they were friends worth having.